like and subscribe. Women, which guys do you find boring? Men who are only interested in talking to women they find sexually attractive. I agree. I mean, you don't have to bone people in order to talk to them. Friendship exists still. Agreed. I had this co-worker who was funny and talkative with all women, no matter looks or age. He would just be making jokes and making old ladies feel special. I don't know, but I always thought it made him so hot. He drawn people to him. Exactly. Who cares what woman they find? Abel? I have noticed these guys are also just way too into themselves and how they look. As if going to the gym is now a personality. OMG, this is the one. I hate feeling like guys see me as just an object. Like here I'm wanting a genuine connection that has nothing to do with sex. And then they want sex on the first date. Like, we have plenty of time for that. Just remember that you are valuable, and if a guy fails to see that and respect you, he ain't it. This was my now best friend's boyfriend. Before they started dating, he was all over her and never talked to me. They basically third wheeled me. Still upset with him over that. I tried my best to be nice. Most of them. No social skills, and not being able to hold an interesting conversation seems to be unfortunately common these days, as easily proven by the myriad of how do I talk to / interact with women posts here every day. If you seriously don't know how to socially interact with members of your own species, I'd recommend less Reddit and more therapy. Wow, that struck a chord with Reddit lol. I wholeheartedly agree with you, of course. Best advice is to just talk with women as you would with anyone, because women *are anyone. Who knew that social skills would be so controversial? I too appreciate people who know how to read a room. It's crazy how that skill has gone from the norm to a scary outlier. But I'm solidly Gen X, so whatever. Less Reddit and more therapy. I feel like 90% of these guys have a social skills problem, sure, but so many also have don't see women as people, the same species as me, so I totally shut down when I have to communicate with one. Problem. Reddit seems to attract a particular type of guy to this sub, and it's always impossible get them to realize that women are just people and you talk to them like you would any person. At least from my experience. Online dating has shown that a lot of men really can't carry a conversation these days. Boring. Guys who bring nothing to the table. Don't do anything aside from watching TV in their free time, not interested in a lot of things, etc. And who actively pick at years. I had an ex tell me that he was intimidated by all the interesting cool things you do all the time. Okay, and what's the solution? Some of those were group things he could have joined me for. Have some hobbies of your own. I want you to have hobbies. This is exactly what I thought. Why would I date someone who doesn't enrich my life? I don't mean to make relationships sound transactional, but honestly, if a guy has no hobbies, underdeveloped opinions, and does nothing to improve the world around him, why would I hang around? What would we talk about all day? What would we do? I don't care if you're super passionate about the migration pattern of toads, just be passionate about something. Be alive. Be in the world, and trying to make it better. I prefer ambitious types, but I've dated all sorts. The best connections were when he had a richer, fulfilling and fun life before me. Our time together was just so much more fun. I have an acquaintance in my friend circle like this. He's super close with some people in the circle, so they invite him out, and he's such a nice guy, but he's *SO* plain. There's nothing to talk to him about. He doesn't really do anything other than watch anime and play board games. It's fine for a little while, but after an hour of talking about the same board game, you just want to talk about cheese or something. Or glued to their phone scrolling through it like a 16y/a girl. Agreed, no ambition is such a turn off. I want to see excitement and passion for something. The ones who turn every conversation sexual. Snorefest. And it's so lazy. Making things sexual is probably the easiest thing there is. God yes, even if I'm attracted to the guy, if he does this, I lose all my interest. Yes. Guys who aren't passionate about / don't care about anything that matters, think ethics, politics, climate, human rights. I call it the South Park effect. According to these folks, the loser is anyone dumb enough to care about anything. That's a big one for me as well. I wanna have interesting thought-provoking conversation about big topics like the ones you mentioned. I somewhat agree with you. But I think is opinion based, and it should be okay if you for example are not into the climate debate. Came here to say this. That seems to be a difficulty with everyone. I love philosophy, history, talking politics and discourse, because they all have important roles in how society is framed, and what actually impacts our lives. Men and women both, I'm a male, in my experience, immediately become disinterested, even offended at such topics. It honestly seems to have become taboo to talk about anything deeper than a 3-foot pool. People think passion is really uncool, unless it's about sex or beer or sports. I.e. anything men are supposed to like. Man, woman or otherwise, I find people boring who have no lust for life, people who depend on media consumption and intoxication for their entertainment, purposeless atheist cynical nihilists who refuse to acknowledge the beauty, if not magic, that surrounds us. I find people boring who seek happiness in solely status and materialism, those who can't entertain a thought or opinion that doesn't suit their views, people who believe in nothing. I'm the Mr. Actually, Miss Peanut Butter to their Bojack Horseman. Life is but you've got to dig out the corn kernels all by yourself. People who scroll through social media while spending time with others. If you're on your phone 5 minutes straight, I'm allowed to leave. I don't care if it's Christmas. Last Christmas I mentioned having a hard time finding work boots and everyone, except me, immediately got on their phones to look for boots, but ended up just scrolling Facebook or whatever. I sat there with my hand folded watching everyone in the room staring at their cell phones, got up, left. I find people who don't have social media very interesting. Funny enough, I feel like your point on who seek happiness in solely status and materialism was actually Mr. PB to a T for the first like 5.5 seasons. This is not at all the point of your message though, and I entirely agree. I think I just have an issue where, if someone brings up Bojack I have to ramble. I find people boring who have no lust for life, people who depend on media consumption and intoxication for their entertainment, purposeless atheist cynical nihilists who refuse to acknowledge the beauty, if not magic, that surrounds us. Honestly, the fear I have as someone with depression, if I were to date someone. While I do my own trauma work, I'd feel bad for the other party when I'm in that bad headspace and can't seem to enjoy life as much. Would do my best to keep it managed, or at least not detrimental to those around me, but yeah, like no one likes a cynic, but also so hard not to be one in these times lol. But why'd you have to attack the ATHEISTSD-? Guys who aren't actually interested in having a conversation, but just want to use another person's presence as a sounding board for them to talk without interruption about their favorite topics. I attract this type and it's pretty frustrating to feel like I need an ice pick to be able to break through the monologue and actually get to contribute to the conversation. But at that point, why bother? If I break in they'll just be thinking about what to say next vs actually being interested in what I'm saying. My boyfriend is like that. I have had to have a talk with him and tell him the way he comes across. Since then, he has been much better at conversing. Maybe people like that don't know that they suck to talk to, and you have to tell them. But I agree with you. It would have been a deal breaker for me if he cold no talk with me, not to me. And I told him that too lol. This is what I was gonna say. In my life I've met people who just want someone to monologue at. I hate when they don't know how to ask questions, or they don't want to because they don't give a one way or the other what the other person thinks/has to say. So boring. So many men are like this. They don't talk *TO**Q. They talk *AT**Q. At some point I just stop trying to even respond at all, and they still don't notice. Shut the up. Like. I'm talkative, but I know how to let a conversation be 50/50 or even open to floor for someone else to talk more. They just make conversations into podcasts. At first I was flattered when my boss would ask me to lunch, then I realized he only did so on days he felt bad and wanted to rant at someone who was forced to listen. I hate men like this. It's incredible how selfish they are. Those who continuously try to impress me and agree with me. I want someone with their own opinions, even if they disagree with mine. Very simple example, got into a debate on whether Iron Man was overhyped or not with this one guy I went out on a date with a few weeks ago. He thought he was overhyped, I thought he wasn't. Another guy who messaged me on Instagram kept agreeing with everything I said about series. Our conversations went like this. Me, Demon Slayer is an amazing anime. Him, yes it is. Me, have you seen it? Him, no. Him, currently watching the 100 on season 3. Me, didn't really like it that much, barely got past episode 3. Him, yeah it's pretty boring. These are just examples, but the idea here is they shouldn't agree with everything you say, because if it starts with basic topics like shows and music, it'll get to major decision making, and then you're on one of two paths, either handling everything on your own and him just nodding along, *or* he will start to claim you're controlling/rude and things will only go south from here. Plus it's boring. I don't like fights, but debates about different topics are beneficial, and bring insight to your opinions as well. It's a great way to grow. It usually just seems so fake when someone does this right. It's so obvious and turns me off. It makes me skeptical and question anything and everything they say. You never know if they genuinely agree or not. Don't lie to me. I had this one guy on Tinder and he asked if I like poems, and if I'd like to hear one. And I said no to try to throw him off and get a reaction. He said me neither. And at that moment I knew that was off. The conversation didn't last long, ended up unmatching, because I was just so skeptical after that line. If you don't like something and I do, you don't have to pretend to like it/dislike it. Stop lying. I cannot comprehend why guys do this. Ahahaha those examples. +1. It basically all boils down to either a lack of personality or trying too hard to impress me. And both are big turn-offs for me. I went out with a guy like this recently, and after one date and a couple weeks of texting I had to cut it off. It got so boring and tedious. He constantly asked for recommendations on things and anytime he was watching, listening to or eating anything was something that I said I liked. He was either trying way too hard to form a connection, or had no sense of self or identity. Okay we get it, yeep yeah you too. I know, yeep yeah, you too. Okay, everybody meet Mr. Me too. That's a Mr. Me too. Off topic, but Demon Slayer really is amazing. I'm so glad that there are other women in this sub interested in anime. When their personality is investing in stocks. Unfathomably boring. They all think they are going to become millionaires from it too. Fanboying over the likes of elongated muskrat. Lol. But you're so right. I once got into a Reddit argument with a Musk fanboy, and it was just embarrassing for them. Trying to go through my post history to find some dirt, all because I said something mildly critical about Musk. I really can't take someone seriously if they worship a rich stranger that much. Got this. A guy that was in my 8th grade class is like that. Flexes on how Hela's gonna be rich etc, but for now Hela's a 17 years old alcoholic. He also said I was weird to a friend of mine for having a snake in 5th grade, but I did not even have one, it was my best friend's. Sorry, I needed to hate on that guy for a second. I couldn't agree more. Along the yellow rat lines, Jordan Peterson or Ben Shapiro. Miss me with that. Guys who do not have hobbies, interests, friends, jobs. Dull bland guys with nothing to talk about. Also guys who make one thing their entire personality. E.g. they exclusively eat, breathe, sleep one video game or one TV show, or their political affiliation etc. I dated a guy like that. At first it was fun that he was always available, but he placed a lot of his happiness on me and our relationship, so it wasn't sustainable long term. I tried to encourage him to go out with his friends, but the number of times he saw them outside of work is somewhere in the single digits. We dated for over a year. It's easier to list the ones I don't find dull. A disturbing number of men are approximately as interesting as day-old oatmeal. The ones who put little to no effort into the conversations and expect me to carry it. Also the ones that can barely communicate without mentioning sex. Grow a personality, please. People who lack enthusiasm and in general are bored. They have boring lives, and by that I mean something that they themselves deem boring, because it is subjective. For example, some people here mentioned that it's boring watching TV all day. But I'd say, consuming media could be an actual hobby. I don't watch TV myself, but I love watching TV series, anime, etc. Maybe it's boring for someone, but we love doing it with my partner and we love discussing movies. It also depends on what you're watching, because there are a lot of meaningful films and series. But what's most important, even if I don't like something, if a person is enthusiastic about it, then I will also listen with enthusiasm. Watching TV. Okay, share with me what moved you. I find cars extremely boring, but one of my good friends loves cars and I love it when she shares something about her hobby. I find sports and gym obsessed people generally boring. But if it doesn't come from the place of vanity, then I can also find something interesting in their athletic hobbies. And the final example. People here mentioned guys who are obsessed with sex and that's the only here they can talk about. I agree. These people are incredibly shallow and boring. But you can have a genuine interest in sex, I mean both in having it and in sex education, and not be a boring person. Sexology is actually super interesting. It all comes down to A. Respect, B. Motives, C. Versatility of interests, and D. Intelligence. So yeah, I guess my conclusion here is that unintelligent, shallow, and disrespectful people are really boring. Your last point is really interesting. This is a tangent, but it reminded of this guy who was really into sex and pleasuring women. That cold approached me asking if he could do a specific sex act a few minutes after we first started talking. I had written him off as a sleaze at first when he was approaching me all sex forward, but I've overheard him practically giving tips and skills lectures to his friends with all these different techniques to best suit a variety of different women. I think you've completely changed my perspective of him. The overly apathetic towards life personality trait really bugs me. Too cool for school, everything is lame, nothing is exciting. Like the cigarette smoking goth kids from South Park. But also the overly spiritual people who think there is nothing wrong with the world. They never show anger, like if an asshole cuts you off in traffic, let's both get angry at them. You for almost hurting us. Definitely the one guy who I went out with and made it the worst experience of my life. We were seated in a small table, facing each other. The place was packed. This man did not speak to me at all, just order his food, and looked at his phone. This lasted for almost 2 hours. After eating he looks up, and starts making small conversation which I completely ignored. I did not use my phone during our time there, I just stared at him, and the people in the surrounding tables looking at us. It was embarrassing but also infuriating. I wanted to cry so bad. But the worst thing, he got up, after eating to go poo in the bathroom at the restaurant. The waitress came up to me after 15+ minutes of him being gone, and gave me the bill, as if he had left without saying goodbye to me. Please tell me you never spoke to this man again. Did you try to talk to him? I'm confused. Devil's advocates. People who will pick at the minutiae of any statement I make, just for the sake of being contradictory. It's exhausting and uninteresting. C. All the people getting their replies to top-level comments removed for derailing D. I hate these guys. They are just so hard to be around. And they have confused being condescending and mean with being smart, and then it's girls don't like smart guys and want a dumb jock. No Nate, we want someone kind who isn't going to tell us our feelings are stupid, because science. STFU. Ugh, I totally agree. There's nothing more irritating than when it feels like Somiana is listening to you, just to find something to pick at, and prove you wrong, not to actually get to know you. I have even had men respond to me using idioms and metaphors. I am so hungry I could eat a horse. That kinda stuff, with that is physically impossible. Or respond to all my jokes with fair enough. It is so condescending. Exactly. Then the pontificating BS that follows as they mansplain how and why they are right and you are wrong, even if you are not. I have a friend like this, and she is aware she is doing this and he tries to be better, so I cannot fault her, but it honestly gets so exhausting. Sometimes you just want someone to agree yeah that is head up instead of coming up with the dumbest things, just to have a counter argument they do not even actually care about. More of the boring / annoying list. I'm rich, therefore you owe me attraction. Ever met those men who think that, just because they have a few coins, you'll automatically fall in love with them? Disgusting. I'm nice, therefore you owe me sex. I'm irresponsible and I don't care about anything. Isn't that cute? OMG, give me attention, because I don't even care for it. DD. The ones who can't hold a decent social conversation or deep talk. I only know this one specific niche area of knowledge, and if you don't know anything about it you are dumb, and I don't care to speak to you. Worse still if they actually don't really understand what they are speaking about, and can't hold a decent conversation when put to task. UHH, just because I'm not interested about IDK. The moons of Saturn doesn't mean I'm incapable. My workplace is my public Tinder. Insecure boys. Those are not men. Guys who cannot help me evolve myself by showing me something new. Guys who have no drive to grow themselves. Guys who cannot communicate their emotions. Guys who are not passionate about anything. Apolitical guys oftentimes. Guys who are not interested in things apart from themselves. Most. On D&D. Incapacity to talk about ideas. Hell, people like that are boring as bat. Agree. Also, being one-dimensional is a turn-off. Men who spend their spare time scrolling Facebook, watching TikToks, the equivalent very boring, and a turn-off. Men who lack empathy for others. Men who embody rigidly toxic masculinity as their personality. Oh, and men who talk in a condescending manner to anyone. Gonna be real honest, and say most of them. I am not sure if they do not feel comfortable or just do not have any social skills. Most guys can only ask basic questions like what are your hobbies, but never anything creative. After a while I get bored of holding the conversations. What kind of creative questions do you usually ask? Someone who drones on and on about their oh so very interesting selves and their oh so wonderful, expensive possessions and their oh so important, deeply boring job in intricate detail. Normally in a monotonal monologue. Without asking a single question, or showing any interest in the person they are talking to. If you want to talk at someone who thinks you are the best thing, since cheese on toast, and interested in your boring conversation, go chat to a mirror. I thought you were going to say get a dog. My dog thinks I'm the bestest since peanut butter. Not gender specific, but people whose general attitude is that everything has to impress them or it is not worth their time. I know so many people who go to things and sit there mutely until they decide it is cool enough. I cannot stand that attitude personally. Yes. Those who aren't passionate about anything. There is nothing more beautiful than the spark in someone's eyes when they talk about something they love. Especially if it's a quirky interest. And there are few things more boring than guys whose interests are football, going to the gym, and watching mainstream movies. Think DC or Marvel movies. Not that there's anything wrong with any of those, but it's so overdone. To be fair to the sports guys, I dated a guy who I thought had a passing interest in sports, and assumed he just plunked down and watched games to zone out. It all seemed very dumb. But then I finally started watching with him, and asking questions, and wow, did he ever open up. Turns out he did have a thing he loved, and it was the nuance and intricacy of the game. It was no different in depth than D&D, say, just more mainstream. All to say, sports may not be everyone's cuppa, but it can definitely be the thing that lights a guy up. Macho men, self-absorbed and arrogant people. Also those who just tag along, and have no will nor thought of their own. Someone who takes himself too seriously, and has no humor. Ones who don't listen to women when they speak. Ones who don't care about minority groups, or aren't empathetic generally. Most men are so dismissive of the concept of privilege and absolutely lack empathy for struggles women and minorities, that they aren't a part of, go through. And worse, will argue back, and tell you it's all in your head. It's such a turn off, but if you can find a guy who actually gets this. The ones who brag about themselves, and make every conversation about them, but then never ask me a single question, or show any interest in my life or opinion. They only want to tell me how amazing they are. The guys I find boring are the ones who try so hard to have a unique opinion on almost every topic. It's just so frustrating to find any points of natural agreement with them, because that's exactly what I'm trying to do on a date. A truly boring person is just someone you don't share any agreements with, and, hence, have nothing of true interest to talk about with. And I know something. Being argumentative is a replacement for true passion in a relationship, but disagreement or conflict shouldn't be the basis for a relationship, unless you have nothing to offer. I've seen men and women both engaged in these type of push-pull relationships, where instability is somehow attractive, because again they have nothing to truly offer once you take away their desire to push back on everything you say or like. A boring person to most isn't a boring person to me. If you're boring most of the time, but you allow me to be without judgments, and I truly feel comfortable with you, and think you're a cute, good guy who can make me laugh every other day, then I'll probably start to like you. I just strongly dislike guys who wish to push back on everything I say, by trying to talk over me, or impress me too much. You've been visited by the ghost of a very important man. Pay your respects by liking and subscribing, and he'll grant you 3 weeks of good luck.